13,000 years were very severe. And so we know that the last pole shift prior to this one was devastating. And so we can ask ourselves, if universe favors humans, and there seems to be some evidence of that, then will this pole shift be a particularly nasty case relative to the previous ones? And at this stage, we also have to acknowledge one other thing. While there is some small amount of movement by the powers that be relative to a pole shift, the vast majority of their efforts appear to be directed at saving themselves and resources from giant solar explosions. If we're talking a CME, a coronal mass ejection, that actually touches the Earth with our weakened state of magnetosphere now, it would actually come into the Earth's atmosphere. This would be devastating, I think, no matter where on the planet one happened to be, because in the process of consuming all of the forests and all of the other infrastructure above ground, a great deal of the atmosphere would be involved. It may be that the oxygen component would not be truly depleted simply because of the amount of carbon dioxide that would be available for other chemical reactions and thus release oxygen, but that may also not be true. The energetic component of a CME touching the northern hemisphere might create serious problems atmospherically for all of the planet. We just can't say. The powers that be sure seem to be thinking along those lines, though. We say this because there's some information about the seed vault that they have atmospheric control for the seeds. This should only be needed if they suspected that while safe from earthquake or pole shift, there was some danger of the atmosphere becoming so polluted that the seeds would be impacted. Make sense?
Yes, makes a lot of sense. This is Gerben again. Thanks for this. I'm really glad that we, as a human race, at least survived so many moving of the ice, and really hope we will not drop the ball at this point. I have a question. I don't know where you are with time with answering questions, but I have a question about the relation with nature and our human mind, in the sense that the changes that are coming, how much, does your data says on, or you think about, how much will the change have to depend on, let me rephrase that, how much, if the human mind is to survive, will it depend on what we will do, the humans themselves, the inner changes that we have to go through? Or how much will it be like pushed from the outside, so the universe organizing it for us? So basically, do we really have to push this change ourselves to be able to survive, or is this something that the change will just occur and we just have to go through it and just survive? Understand?
I understand that question. My personal view is that humans have very little power. We don't control any circumstances whatsoever. As Buddhists stated, you get enlightenment when you realize that everything, including yourself and all your thoughts, are illusion. And this is quite true. We never really have original thoughts. We are simply in a position where our energetic field receives something through its signature, and we think that thought originated with us because it was sent out by universe in such a way as to have our signature on it. Now, bear in mind that universe may send out a particular thought that has trillions upon trillions upon trillions of signatures as preference to this. In an internet fashion, that would be like having an IP address for a huge part of the continent attached to an email message, and it would go to each and every one of those IP addresses, or any of them, if you will, that happen to be turned on at the moment that was broadcast. So if that's the way that universe works, then we really truly have no control whatsoever. And this is sort of a good thing because we can give ourselves up quite freely to whatever happens. We also need note that no human ever gets out of life alive, and in spite of claims to the contrary. And so death being a natural part of the process, it's, while necessarily a fearful one, can be approached in a fearless manner. And thus, my survival is not up to me. I have no real control over what particular may happen. A tornado can come and snatch me up and deposit me naked in a bunch of mud 5 states over, and alive, and again, none of that is up to me. I merely, at that point, have only one thing that I can do about anything, and that is my attitude. So if the tornado does that, I will have the proper attitude of saying, well, thank you, tornado. Sorry you had to beat me up to get my attention, but I'm sort of glad to be here and will pay attention to what's going on at the moment. The issue of the survival of any given individual is something that is related to your personal karma, affecting your particular signature for the energetic mass that you are. So my commenting on it is meaningless. It's pure speculation. That's why I don't know that there's any given particular safe place. I also accept my own death quite willingly as being part of life. And therefore, universe has placed me, for instance, 135 feet above sea level, and placed me in such conditions that I'm not able to harmonize with universe and extract myself from this particular height above sea level. Therefore, it must want me here, and I harmonize with that. It has also given me an inclination from being in a genetic strain going back through the Normans and the Vikings and the Phoenicians and the Celts to the great sea peoples of the past. And therefore I have this cellular reaction to the oceans and water and boats. I'm harmonizing with that, and I'm building myself a very sturdy little sailboat for such conditions as may arise in the future. But I do so with no illusion that it would be a savior from anything of a catastrophic nature. I do it because universe has presented me with the situation and the conditions and the capabilities to do so, and I enjoy harmonizing with that particular thread. Same thing is true with the meditation. I have no illusions whatsoever that the meditation will present me with an enlightened state such that I could go poof and avoid the whole pole shift should it occur. It probably is quite necessary that I die in that pole shift should it occur. To a certain extent, I take comfort in this because a violent death is at least quick and progresses you along on things very rapidly. Having lived with people who have chosen to die over the course of decades, I choose to go quick. Again, thus my martial arts training and so on that I harmonize with. But let us also note, if one were to look at my birth chart, and you have an excellent resource there with Michael, he will be able to tell you this man's chart is divided pretty much evenly between the feminine and the masculine, but all of the masculine is heavily influenced by the martial fields, if you will, that emanate from Mars or are identified with Mars. So I can't really help the fact that I have an affinity towards the martial arts. The most I can do is decide to harmonize with that and do it as best I can, or to ignore it, given the particular attitude that I have. I find that when I harmonize with universe, things are a lot more cooperative, and I suffer a lot less. Therefore, harmonization is kind of a cool thing. But again, I have no illusions that safety or security exists at all, and let me tell you, that is the greatest freedom of all to recognize and grasp and live that you are dead at this moment. You just haven't gotten to that particular moment at this time.
Great stuff. Thanks a lot. I'm just looking around if there are more questions.
I'm prepared for more questions. I don't have a time limit, but I will need to get some coffee in about a half an hour.
I just wanted to say something about going poof. I believe that there's a group of people who were... They're called the Bon Po, and in their tradition there's something that they call the rainbow body, and they developed a system where they could actually align with their rainbow body. So instead of the normal death, they would transfer themselves in. These people actually were able to gather themselves to activate the light in their DNA and actually become their rainbow bodies, so they were able to leave this time-space as they chose to.
Over. I understand what you're discussing. It's frequently within the literature that I read. I have some extensive knowledge for a Westerner of Sanskrit and the historical Pali dialogues, and have come across such references before. Also, my personal martial art is Aikido, called The Way of Peace by its founder, who we call O-Sensei. And O-Sensei also described the rainbow. He called it the rainbow bridge between heaven and earth, and you could align yourself with that, harmonize with it, and go as you chose throughout space-time, time-space, by choosing particular colors, if you will, or harmonics to go along. And O-Sensei was a great mystic and a metaphysicist and I also go along with those traditions. Now, we have, for instance, the 6 yogas of Naroda, which comes out of Kashmir and Tibet, and he gives 6 different techniques for getting to that stage, if you will. And the last one is the 6th yoga, and says you could basically do this on your deathbed if you got really clear at that point. The other 5 are how to more or less achieve it in this life. But it comes back to something else as well. Now, bear in mind, my energetic vibrations are martially oriented, and this gives me a particular squirrely view of reality, because even if I could go poof, I have not the wisdom to decide that that would be an appropriate impact on my karma. It, as I say, it may be necessary and desirable and beneficial for myself to go through some rather horrific times, especially relative to the chaos, because I chose to live here at this time. So I don't like the idea of checking out before the movie is over, if that makes sense. Not to say that that is not a valid choice for other individuals. My viewpoint is necessarily colored by the karmic conditions that were set up at my birth, and as a martial artist, my approach is, welcome to my mat. Please demonstrate your art that I may demonstrate mine, and the ultimate expression of that art is how I conduct myself through the transit into death. End of statement.
Hi, Cliff. This is Julie again. This isn't quite as deep, but I was curious. There's some stuff up on the internet about Dan Burish in a box, and I was curious if your data had any information about that.
Yes, Julie. I have all kinds of information showing up around Dan Burish because of the amount of verbiage that's associated with him. So, for instance, in our lexicon, we do get information about specific personalities. Excuse me. These personalities have associated with them archetypes. The archetype of Dan Burish and his looking glass business and some of the stuff that he stated make a good story, but we don't have any backing within our lexical discussions to suggest that Dan Burish is in any way as he claims. So, and in fact, there's a lot of the archetypes within the structure that we hold, the context that we hold for Dan Burish in this other subset that would seem to suggest that he's part of a disinformation a situation for whatever reason, personal gain or whatever, I don't know. This brings up, there's several individuals that are out there that keep showing up within our data sets, within the archetypes, and they, for instance, are promulgating, in the case of Dan Burish, the timeline business, which is a fine understanding of things, however limited, but there's no evidence to support that the claims that are being made from these individuals, however cohesive, are anything other than a giant scam, if you will. So it brings up the issue of the gray aliens. A common characteristic of the aliens as is described by all of the whistleblowers at all levels, no matter how many races they're describing,